We've covered the inner planets and the two social planets. Now it's time to talk about the outer planets. In astrology, these consist of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Some of you might be asking, wait a sec, what about Chiron, the planetoid that orbits between the inner and outer planets? Well, whether Chiron should be considered an outer planet depends entirely upon who you ask. My feeling is that he doesn't quite belong to either group and instead has a meaningful role as a bridge between the two. Since you'll need some knowledge of the outer planets before you can understand the bridge to them, I'll leave Chiron out for now and limit this discussion to the roles of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto in the horoscope. For thousands of years, Saturn was the last planet in the chart, the end of what we knew about the solar system. And that was okay because the inner planets represented everything a human needed: identity, feelings, thought, love, action, growth, and limits and death. Everything that comprised a human life was there, and it was all that was needed because through most of Western civilization, life was local. We didn't need a more complex representation than Saturn. It can be difficult for a modern mind to wrap itself around this, but if you were to go back to the streets of Florence just 1,000 years ago, you'd be surprised by just how dense the people were. Nobody knew anything because there was extraordinarily little to know. The biggest monastery contained a few hundred manuscripts that almost no one could read and that contained a lot of wrong information. For the most part, people were born, lived, and died in a 5-mile radius. No germ theory of disease, no understanding of why a volcano erupted, no difference between religion and science. An average person came across less information in a lifetime than is found in a small town daily newspaper today. Another factor we have to consider is that in Western civilization, choices were made for people. Those choices were based on family status and circumstances of birth. Your mother was a scullery maid. Your father was a cooper, so that's what you would be. What wasn't decided by family was decided by the church. Moreover, life was short. Death was always just around the corner. The sophisticated, global, collective outer planets were unknown and unmissed because the human experience didn't need those representations. Then the Western world slowly began to change. First, we got the printing press, then the trade routes opened. People began to have experiences of non-local goods and international ports. Leeuwenhoek discovered microbes. Inventions began to trickle out of world cities. That flowed into the Enlightenment, which marked the beginnings of what we consider science. Philosophy flourished, and the church began to lose its grip. Then, importantly, the Industrial Revolution began, and more importantly, two political revolutions came back to back that overthrew old ideas about government. It was officially a new time, and astrology needed modern representations. So, in a 150-year period between 1781 and 1930, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto appeared. Now, these new planets were named after Roman gods. That fact influenced their astrological interpretations, no doubt. But because astrology hinges on observation, their meanings were also based on what was going on in the world when each planet came into public consciousness. In the late winter of 1781, Uranus, god of the heavens, entered the horoscope. Ever since, it has stood as a symbol for the creative, inventive, rebellious, and revolutionary thinking that was reaching an apex at the time of its discovery. It was 1846 when a German named Gall noticed something funny in the orbit of Uranus. Mathematical calculations led to the discovery of Neptune. This dreamy, spiritual planet's arrival coincided with the Romantic movement and Impressionism, a period in which imagination was primary. Eastern religions came to the West, while spiritualism and mysticism surged in popularity, and the use of opiates became mainstream. It's considered the planet of imagery, partly because the first photographic images came into being when Neptune appeared. Then we had Manifest Destiny and the highly Neptunian illusory gold rush, along with compassionate movements such as suffrage and abolitionism. Finally, the Communist Manifesto was published. Neptune still represents communes, compassion, spirituality, escapism, the arts, and those aspects of the mind that are ungrounded, emotional, and ill-defined. Pluto is the planet of life, death, and extremism. So naturally, it was discovered in the year 1930 during the dire era of America's Great Depression, and it coincided with radical fascism in the West. Pluto was also the planet of inner transformation and introspection, and thus it isn't surprising that it arrived during the birth of psychotherapy. Freud's work on the ego and Jung's exploration of the shadow both came into consciousness then. And that's really a time that we can look back on now as the beginnings of what we call the self-help movement. With ever more refined technology in audio and visual recording, we finally began to see the power of mass media and the power of a socialized public education system. But I think the most plutonic and world-changing event that expressed the new planet was the development of nuclear fission, or the atom bomb. Mass annihilation through technology is now a permanent part of the human psyche. The newest and most modern planet brought with it an unavoidable conclusion. Our scientific prowess has far exceeded the spiritual prowess of our species. Pluto now represents the part of the collective mind that wonders if we really are at the end times and worries that it might be too late. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto move slowly, so millions and millions of people will share the same placement, generations. That's why these planets are referred to as generational influences. And that begs a question. Do the outer planets have any effect on individual personality? Yes, a profound effect, provided we consider two factors, position and placement. By this, I mean, what aspects are the outer planets making to the inner personal planets? And where do they fall in the chart? We can put aspects way down the road as we unfold the subject of astrology, but we do have to look at the houses now if we're going to gain a real understanding of the last three planets in the horoscope. So the 12 houses will be coming next. Thank you for watching Secrets from an Astrologer's Desk, Intro to the Outer Planets. Stay tuned for all the ways you can get in touch for a birth chart reading and full astrological services. Smash the like button and subscribe.